This is your Tuesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. A lot to get to today. It's a busy time of year. What with the Wolves in the playoffs, Game 2 at Memphis is tonight. 7:30 start, I believe, tonight before that series shifts back to Target Center on Thursday. Wolves, of course, up 1-0 in that series. We'll get to that a lot more here in a little bit, both some observations of my own and with Velle E. Neal III, Star Tribune columnist, who checks in with some thoughts on Wolves, Wild, Twins, and Celebrate Gate. Yeah, Velle got in some trouble with some folks on Twitter last week for saying the Wolves and fans were celebrating too much that Clippers win. So I got to talk to Velle a little bit about that. He's a good sport. He has rebounded nicely from all that. Some Twins starting pitching thoughts. Velle talked about it a little bit, but I'll get a little bit more depth on that. Got to touch on the Loons, Minnesota United. I missed that over the weekend. I saw it, but I didn't touch on it with Patrick Royce on Monday's show, so I want to get to that. Big recruit coming to the Gophers men's basketball team, Dawson Garcia. I'll have a little bit on that later, and Marcus Foligno, Gophers men's basketball beat writer, will join me on Wednesday's show to talk about that even more. And an interesting college hockey story that kind of came out of nowhere with a prominent player in this state, so we'll get to that as well. But first, what did I miss? Got to talk about the Wolves. Anthony Edwards, just kind of, they're becoming the darlings a little bit of the NBA. I think they turned some heads all season, but in particular with that 130-117 win over Memphis in Game 1 on Saturday. Anthony Edwards, of course, their 20-year-old second-year player, had 36 points in his playoff debut, putting himself in some pretty good company in terms of age and playoff debuts and things of that nature. He was on ESPN's NBA Today. Just another one of his excellent, fun media appearances. People just gravitate towards him. They just have a smile on their face when they are talking to him, talking about him. But one clip that I want to play quick is particularly salient to other things I want to talk about on this show. So let's play that quick.
All right, before we let you go, Anthony, he picked his Grizzlies to win this series in 5 games. Do you have any message for Big Perk that we can pass along?
Carry on.
Carry on. There we go.
So the Wolves are probably using, that was a funny clip. The Wolves are probably using this as motivation, right? Other people have picked against them. And, what's interesting is Kendrick Perkins was not alone. ESPN panelists before the playoffs started, there were 21 different experts that picked every series, and when it came to Memphis against the Wolves, I thought it was a very interesting breakdown. 21 picks for Memphis, 0 picks for the Wolves. Now, I picked the same thing. I thought Memphis was going to win this series at the beginning of before it all started. My opinion is shifting. I think it's now a toss-up. I think it's basically a coin flip. Once you win Game 1 on the road, the statistics bear that out. I think all-time in NBA history, when the away team wins Game 1 in a 7-game series, at least since they shifted to the 2 at home, 2 away, home away, home at the end, since in 1984, it's about a 500 split. 53 times the underdog, the lower seed, has won that series, while 54 times the home seed, the higher seed, has won. So it's basically a coin flip at this point after you win Game 1. But before the series started, I thought, it's a possibility that the Wolves will be in this thing, and then, if it goes deep in this series, who knows? But I did think Memphis was going to win, and so that was, you looked at that and you're like, well, nobody went on a limb for the Wolves, but, that would be a pretty big limb because Memphis won 10 more games than the Wolves did this year. They were the 2 seed compared to the 7 seed. They had home court, things like that. What was also interesting about it, though, is that every single person picked this to go at least 5 games, and the majority picked it to go 6 games. I think 12 out of the 21 picked it to go 6 games. A couple people picked 7 games, and the rest picked a 5-game series like Kendrick Perkins. So that's interesting to me, just because I think a lot of people had a perception of this series that it would be competitive to a certain degree, that the Wolves might just kind of be not exactly happy to be there, but that they were going to, get a game or two, but that was it. That Memphis was just going to be too tough, that was going to be the way the series played out. And that could still be the way this series plays out, right? I mean, I'm going to talk to Lavelle about this a little bit more in a bit, what he thinks of this series going forward, but, I think my perception of it changed quite a bit just with that one game, not just because the Wolves won the game, but because of the way they won the game. With Karl-Anthony Towns playing as well as he did, with Anthony Edwards playing as well as he did, with Memphis not being able to attack the offensive glass, not being able to exploit certain other weaknesses. It's just like we thought going in. It's a pretty good matchup for the Wolves. Now you look at it and say, can Minnesota win 3 of the next 6 games? When 3 of them are going to be at Target Center, or could be at Target Center if it goes if the series goes full. Yeah, I think they could. I mean, the season series was 2-2 in the regular season. Why can't they go 3-3 in these next 6? So that has changed a lot in this time. Now, I still don't think the Wolves are favored in this series, but I think it's more of a coin flip now. And guys, the odds obviously get a lot better if the Wolves can expand their lead. I think the lower seeds are 21-4 in series if they take both games 1 and game 2 on the road. While, if Memphis gets this one, all of a sudden the upper hand, even if the Wolves have the home court, the upper hand shifts back to the higher seed historically. So a lot at stake in this game tonight, and we will see what happens.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Now, before I bring Lavelle in, pretty good home ice battle brewing in the NHL between the Wild and the Blues, and the Wild will be without Marcus Foligno for a few games. Positive COVID test. They got an easier slate of games this week. I believe they got Montreal, Vancouver, and Seattle. None of those teams really among the NHL's elite, to say the least, but missing, Marcus Foligno. Jordan Greenway's been out. Matt Dumba's been out. That's a lot of your core players to be out, even against, competition that's maybe not as fierce as it has been. So let's see if the Wild can take advantage of that schedule this week while missing some of their key players, because right now they're trying to fend off St. Louis. St. Louis is making a huge charge to get that number 2 spot in the division and get home ice in that first round playoff series. A virtual certainty that the Wild and the Blues will play each other in that first round based on looking at who's above them, who's below them. But home ice in a very highly contested series could end up being the difference. So watch for the Wild this week. Can they still bank some points without some of their best players, including Marcus Foligno? Happy to have Velle E. Neal III back on Daily Delivery, Star Tribune columnist. Wanted to check in with him on a number of subjects. Lavelle, I guess right off the jump, I got to ask you, have you recovered from Celebrate Gate?
Yeah, I'm wiped out, man. When I got my column done on Friday, I started celebrating the fact that it was done. I ran down the stairs, ran in around the living room, jumped up on the coffee table and broke the coffee table. So, and then I took off my shirt and threw it across the living room and had to calm myself down. So it's all over.
Wolves fans got on you pretty good for getting on the Wolves for the celebration after the play-in game. But I saw you have a sense of humor about it. You tweeted this must have been Sunday night. Wild clinch a playoff berth. Woohoo! Celebrate! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! So you're playing into it now.
I am. It may be fair to accuse me of being a troll, I guess, at this point, but I just love it how fans can sit there and rip on players, rip on coaches, rip on front offices, rip on media. But then when you criticize them for one thing, they go apoplectic and just can't handle what they've been dishing out. So I could care less if they're upset at me, to be honest with you. I'm actually reveling in how they are overreacted to my reaction.
Overreacting to the reaction. Well, there's been a lot of reactions lately. Perhaps a little bit of the Wolves' joy Tuesday night, now, about a week ago, when they beat the Clippers, was the fact that it meant not just that they were in the playoffs, but that they got to play Memphis instead of potentially having to play Phoenix or being out. And I think we saw, Lavelle, in game one, why that is. We've talked a lot about how that seemed to be a pretty favorable matchup, and then they go out and win that first game by 13 to take a 1-0 series lead going into this game 2 on Tuesday night in Memphis.
The thing about it was that the Wolves led the league in scoring, right about 115 points a game. And Minnesota pretty much played its game. They enforced their will on that game. Memphis wasn't able to play at the pace it normally likes to play at. And that's got to be troubling for them to play at home and have someone come into their house and dictate the tempo. And I think the Wolves successfully did that for 4 quarters in game 1. Towns rebounded after the play-in game in which he, had foul trouble and didn't score much. Anthony Edwards continues to just take his game to other levels that we're not used to seeing from such a young kid. And they get the right contributions at the right times from D'Lo and from Malik Beasley and Patrick Beverley. And it's really cool to see how this team is operating. Jay McDaniels, 15 points off the bench, plus 19 on a plus minus. I mean, that's just huge. So they're getting they're getting contributions, man, from just like they did during the regular season. So Memphis has got to go back to the drawing board here and see what they were unable to do against Minnesota before game 2 starts.
Now, part of the reason you probably didn't want to see this team celebrate too soon is I would imagine you still remember game 163 from 2009, where the Twins win that game. They pop all the champagne. They're going crazy, and they go out and get smoked by the Yankees. What do you offer in the area of cautionary tales for prematurely thinking you are in control of a season or getting too high when you shouldn't be too high?
Yeah, that game 163 was something else because it was win or go home. I mean, even the playing game, if the Wolves had lost that playing game, they still had another chance to backdoor their way into the postseason. Game 163 between the Tigers and the Twins was more of loser has to leave town type feeling to it. So I think that led to their celebration. But yeah, I mean, by the time the Twins exhaled from celebrating, the series was over against the Yankees. They had to start Brian Dunsing in game 1 at Yankee Stadium. And we all saw how that turned out, So I don't think we're looking at something like that with the Wolves, where they got to worry about having a letdown in game 2. I think this team feeds off of the positivity and the team mentality that they have right now. So I don't expect I expect maybe a closer game, maybe a more physical game, but I don't expect the Wolves to get blown out of the court here. I picked the Grizzlies in 6 before the series started, and I can already see multiple reasons why that prediction could be wrong. Just watching game 1 and how Towns played and how Edwards played and how the Grizzlies didn't really make adjustments.
That's a good point. I mean, I felt like going in that this was going to be a series. I feel now like the Wolves can legitimately win. Not that they should win, but I feel like it's more of a coin flip at this point than it was even just before Saturday's game.
Yeah, because the reason I said Grizzlies in 6, I was like, well, I have to go back to Memphis for game 7. That's going to be a tough measure there. So that's why I called Memphis in 6 in the first part. I just thought they were a better team, but we can't underestimate the fact that the Wolves keep getting better as a team, that the way Chris Finch has them being held accountable for everything, how they can have tough conversations with each other mid-game and still come out better for it. It just shows continuous growth. And he lets guys be themselves. He encourages them to score, but just don't, step out too far outside the lines. The one thing you have to watch out with the Wolves is them getting too emotionally wound up where they're arguing with officials about calls or Beverly getting into it with Dylan Brooks. I'm waiting for that to erupt at sometime during the series. But they have been known as one of the more complaining teams in the NBA, and they got to watch out for that part of their play to creep in and sabotage their chances to get out of the series.
Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of accountability, shifting to the Wild, in the game that they clinched a playoff berth on Sunday, they beat San Jose, but they weren't happy about it, really. I mean, they won 5-4 in overtime, but it sounds like the Hartman, Zuccarello, Kaprizov line, was pretty bad in that game. And, knowing that they have to be better, especially down the stretch here in the playoffs, probably a good sign that they, right away, even a team that wins and clinches a playoff berth in the process knows it's going to have to be better if it has, aspirations of making a deep playoff run, which this team has the makings of, but it also has the makings of a team that, if they get off their game, could get bounced very easily in the first round by St. Louis.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the last couple of games the Wild have played. They've given up a boatload of goals here. And is that because of injuries like Dumba and Greenway, or is there something deeper than that? I like the moves that Bill Guerin made before the trade deadline, and I think he tried to address whatever warts this team had. But the one thing I like from the Wild is the fact that they get off the mat. When they fall behind, 3 or 4 goals, they claw their way back. That's a good trait to have, especially when you're heading into the postseason. You just don't want to get caught trying to do it too many times where it can come back to bite you. So I think they need to get healthy. I think they need to get Dumba back, to help that defense in front of the goaltenders, and maybe cut down on the goal scoring that the opponents have had success against them in the last few games. I watched their comeback. I watched them rally back twice in each of their last 2 games. One they lost in overtime, the other one they won. Fiala's on a howler right now. He's closing in on 30 goals. I'm actually working on the column for Wednesday about who should they keep, Dumba or Fiala. So Fiala's making a strong case for it to be him, I would argue, even though he does have some flaws in his game as well. So this team is infatuated. I'm infatuated with this team just because of the talent they have. Kaprizov's going to score probably 45 goals this year. Hartman's getting all kinds of assists. I mean, it's been just a fantastic season, and I hope they can make a deep playoff run. It'll be fun if both the Wolves and the Wild, can have a little bit of a postseason run, because then you'll have fun in this town pretty much every night, because either one will be playing one night, the other will be playing the next night. It'll just be a lot of fun for local fans to absorb.
I talked about that with Royce on Monday show. It's only the 3rd time ever that both those teams have made the playoffs in the same year, and they haven't won a playoff series ever in the same year. So this, these teams, I wouldn't say the Wolves certainly aren't favored yet, even though they won game 1, and the Wild will have a tough matchup in its series. But, by and large, like you said, I think both of these teams are as fun at the same time as I can remember them being.
Well, I just remember the year that the Wild made the postseason run where Brunette hit that huge goal against the Avalanche.
Yes.
And it was the same year that the Wolves reached the Western Conference Finals, I want to say.
No, it was the year the year the Wild made it in 2003 was the year before the Wolves made their run.
There was a postseason where they were pretty much playing every other night.
That was the same one. The Wolves were playing the Lakers in the first round that year, and they were kind of going back and forth. And the Wolves actually took a 2-1 series lead against the Lakers that year, but could not finish that one off. They ended up losing that series, but that was about as close as we got to the actual dueling teams doing well.
That's the year, because I was on the road with the Twins and they were in Chicago, and I'm watching these playoff series. One night I'm in the hotel lobby bar watching the Wild play. The next day I'm watching the Wolves play, going, man, it must be fun back home right now, because people got something to talk about every day.
And 19 years later, we're doing it again. It's all it took was 19 years later, because the last time they did it in 2018, they both got bounced pretty quickly in those series.
I looked it up. Since the Wild started in 2000, there's never been a calendar year where the Wild, Wolves, Twins, and Vikings have played a playoff game. There's not been
2003 was as close as we as we could get, because the Twins made the playoffs that year too.
And it's easy to look up, because all you have to do is follow the 3 times the Wolves have been in the postseason.
That is not true. They've been in there more than that. It's a cheap shot. And
since 2000. Since 2000.
It's a cheap shot still. You know that. Hey, let's talk Twins before we get out of here quick. They beat Boston 8-3, 10 a.m. Central Time start. I bet they've never played a 10 a.m. game before, but obviously the Boston Marathon, the whole scene in Boston on Monday, which is pretty cool. What's more surprising to you? I know they had 8 runs today. They've had a couple games with 8, another game with 10, but the other games, I think they've scored 11 runs combined in their other 7 games. What's more surprising to you? How slow the offense has been to get going, or how relatively good the starting pitching has been?
Probably the starting pitching. Dylan Bunny's given up 1 run, I believe, in 92 thirds innings as a Twin so far. Yeah, I'm not ready to. Like I said, I'm not ready to announce that Bundy is going to be one of the great free agent acquisitions ever, because I still remember Martin Perez was great for just a half year. I remember Sidney Ponson was good for like a month. And Russell Ortiz was 3-0 one year after signing with the Twins. So I can know how that could come to a crashing halt. But Bundy looks like he knows what he's doing. He doesn't have the high octane stuff he used to, but he's accurate. If it's off the plate, he means that pitch to be off the plate. He wants the guy to chase it, and when it's on the corner, he wants it on the corner. So he's able to execute right now, and he's being really effective. I'm encouraged by Chris Archer. I like the fact that he's hitting 94 in the gun, and he has a good slider. So there's definitely stuff to work with there. I'm kind of surprised that he was still available as a free agent when the Twins did sign him, because that was after training camp opened, I believe, that they announced the Archer signing. I hope Sonny Gray recovers from his hamstring quickly and gets. That's another guy with a lot of experience, a lot of know-how, how to navigate a bat in order. And then after that, it's about watching Ober and Ryan continue to, learn and develop. And Joe Ryan he's pitching like he's a 6-year veteran now, the way he's kind of easing his way up and down batting orders. I have been mildly surprised about how the starting pitching has been effective. I wish they had one more big arm in the bullpen. I am advocating for Joan Duran to be the closer. I know in Rocco's world that means something different with him. He just wants to have his best reliever ready to face the heart of the order, whether it's the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, and then try to cobble things together. But having Griffin Jacks try to pitch the last 2 innings in Fenway Park to me is something that's not always going to work out in the Twins' favor. So I would like to see Duran be around for the 9th inning here a little more often. But so far, I think it's been the pitching more so than the offense, because I've seen this offense get off to a slow start before. We know they're going to strike out a lot. That's been their motive for the last 4 or 5 years. It's going to be a matter of time that they start hitting. And then when Buxton gets back in the lineup too, that'll be a little bit of a joke to the offense as well.
You should make a recording of yourself saying when Buxton gets back in the lineup, because we've had to say that a lot over the years, haven't we?
I know we have. You know what? I'm just glad it wasn't something serious, because all the Twitter MD doctors were screaming the season's over. The Twins blew $100 million. He couldn't even last a month. This is horrible. And then we find out that he just got some knee inflammation. So they dodged a bullet there, and he should be in the lineup maybe sometime during the Kansas City series here coming up. Also, Miguel Sano has just 2 hits so far this year. He loves hitting in Kansas City more than any other park in the league. So I expect to see a big series from Sano, and that would slingshot him into the White Sox series at home this weekend.
There you go. I like it, Lavelle. You got any final predictions for Tuesday night's Wolves game at Memphis?
I got to imagine I can't see Memphis losing 2 back-to-back playoff games at home. I think they're going to make a couple of adjustments and figure out a way to slow the Wolves down. I don't know if they can totally scheme at Karl-Anthony Towns, but it seems like Towns is going to present some matchup problems with them, just with their personnel, because I think he doesn't mind scoring on JJJ, and he doesn't mind scoring on Baines, and I think that's going to be a problem for Memphis. And if Anthony Edwards continues to have, strong games, it's going to be tough. But I see the Grizzlies figuring out a way to win game 2, and then the Wolves come home 1-1. You know what? Mission accomplished if that's the case. So
I agree with that. Looking forward to it. Should be a fun week. Good stuff. And we'll talk to you soon, Lavelle. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Now, I was surprised at first that Lavelle picked the starting pitching is a bigger surprise than the struggling offense. But then I looked at the numbers. The Twins, through their 10 games this season, their starters' ERA is 2.96. That is 5th in Major League Baseball, 2nd in the American League, behind just the Chicago White Sox. A shame that they have not been able to take advantage of it to a greater extent, because the offense has been sluggish in a lot of these games, and the bullpen has failed to hold, a couple of leads. The one in particular early in the season when Byron Buxton hit that go-ahead home run, but Tyler Duffy could not hold the lead in the 9th inning. But the starting pitching, by and large, led by a lot of different guys, but Dylan Bundy had another very good start. He's 2-0 for them. Very good start against Boston in that win on Monday, that early win, 10 a.m. start. It's just, I don't recall ever seeing a Twins game start that early, start when the breakfast menu is still up, but, you take him however you can get him. But I was surprised by that. As bad as the offense has been for most of the season, the starting pitching, which we thought was going to be a major deficiency for this team, and it's only 10 games. That's 1/16 of the season. Basically, if this was the NHL or the NFL, you'd barely be into your year, but, that's that said, it's been a pleasant surprise so far. And let's see, at the end of this month or even into middle of May, if that still holds true. Now, like I said at the jump, we got to mention Minnesota United. Patrick Royce and I did not talk about Minnesota United on Monday's show, but, the offense, just like the Twins offense, been struggling at the start of the year. Their first 6 matches this season, they had scored just 5 goals combined. They had managed to get out with some results because of some good defense. They started the year with 2 wins and 2 draws, a couple 1-0 wins, a couple 1-1 draws, but the lack of offense had come back to hurt them in a couple recent losses to Seattle and Austin. But then on Saturday, got 3 goals against Colorado, including 2 of them late, to really kind of start feeling good about themselves a little bit more again. Got the offense going. We knew it was going to happen at some point, but you can't take it for granted. So that is a good sign for them as they kind of enter a busier stretch of games here. They got a U.S. Open Cup match against Madison on Wednesday, and then a league match, a Major League Soccer match against Chicago on Saturday. So we will see if they can continue to build off of that 3-goal game against Colorado in those settings. A couple more things to get to before we get out of here. Dawson Garcia, like I mentioned at the jump, a very talented player for the Gophers. McDonald's All-American, committing to the Gophers, rebounding from 2 previous stints. Started his college career at Marquette, went to North Carolina, so he's played for 2 pretty premium programs in the first 2 years of his college career. Now trying to play for the Gophers, announced that he is going to go there on Monday. A huge get for Ben Johnson. Now, because this is his second transfer, he does not have that free transfer anymore. He will have to apply for a hardship waiver in order to be eligible immediately, although there appear to be some extenuating circumstances. Garcia left North Carolina during the middle of last season to help out with his family, which was very impacted by COVID. His dad, his grandma, there's been a lot of things going on in his life that could impact the decision on whether or not to grant him immediate eligibility. Those things obviously bigger than basketball, but on the basketball court, definitely a very skilled player, tall, good rebounder. He's, 6'11", formerly of Prior Lake, could really help the Gophers make a leap next year. I mean, they already have Jamison Battle coming back, Parker Fox, who was supposed to be a, pretty highly thought of incoming player who was injured last season. He should be back at full strength. They've got some good incoming, high school recruits, 7 Minnesota natives on the roster coming in. Marcus Fuller did talk to Dawson Garcia on Monday. He said, it's the coolest thing. It's like the coolest thing ever. Ben's done an unbelievable job to establish a culture in 1 year. I can only imagine what he's going to do in year 2 and beyond. I'm excited to put on the uniform, but also when the time comes to be a proud alum and say I was part of the process of getting Minnesota basketball back. Now, all of that remains to be seen. What they can accomplish remains to be seen, but that is a huge get for Ben Johnson, like I said, and Marcus Fuller and I will have a lot more on that on Wednesday's show, so I'm excited to talk to Marcus more about the significance of this on the program and what there still could be to come this offseason. Let's finish with the cooler. Interesting story coming out of Minnesota State Mankato. Dryden McKay, their excellent goalie, Hobie Baker winning goalie, suspended 6 months, a doping suspension. Sounds like it was an innocent mistake, more or less. There was a substance in a supplement that was inadvertently taken, tainted. It was not on the label. Players still held accountable for what goes into their body, though, so he's been given this suspension. It was detected at the Olympics, ironically, because he was, an alternate on the team. He was subject to testing. That was in Rachel Blount's excellent story on StarTribune.com. So maybe none of this happens if there isn't this whole Olympic thing. Does not sound like it was intentional. Of course, we never know the full story, but this seems like a case where it was an honest mistake. But just kind of the ripple effect does not seem like he got much competitive benefit from it at all, but still gets a 6-month suspension. And of course, Hobie Baker Award winner, Minnesota State beat the Gophers 5-1 in the Frozen Four semifinals, with Dryden McKay playing a pretty big role in that. So he was able to stay eligible for the rest of this season and now is serving a 6-month suspension before he can start any sort of pro career. So just a tough story coming out of Minnesota State Mankato. Hopefully he can put that behind him at a certain point and move forward. That will do it for today. Like I said, Marcus Fuller will be on the show on Wednesday to talk more Gophers men's basketball. Thursday, excited, Trey Lance, NFL quarterback, formerly North Dakota State, formerly of Marshall, Minnesota. He will be on the podcast to talk about a lot of money he just raised for a charity in southwest Minnesota, about the draft, about NFL life, things like that. So that will be on Thursday's show. And of course, tomorrow we will have tons of talk about the Wolves coming off of Game 2 tonight in Memphis. Thank you so much for joining me on Daily Delivery today. I'm Michael Rand. We'll catch you again on Wednesday.